On that note, Ambassador Kaju, your first thoughts on what has happened in India's parliament this morning. India abrogating Article 370, removing the special status given to J&K, and also creating two union territories, one for Jammu and Kashmir and another for Ladakh. And on your screens right now is another tweet put out by former Minister Arun Jaitley. He says, "My compliments to the Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji and the Home Minister Shri Amit Shah for correcting a historical blunder. A historical wrong has been undone today. Article 35A came through the back door without following the procedure under Article 368 of the Constitution of India. It had to go. Separate status led to separatism. No dynamic nation can allow the situation to continue," unquote. That is coming in from Arun Jaitley. All right, Ambassador Kaju is joining us from New Delhi. Ambassador Kaju, thank you for joining us on Beyond World is One. Your initial reaction on the developments this morning in the Parliament?
I think this is, of course, a historic day. The original basis on which there was an accession by the state of Jammu and Kashmir to the Union, and the way it had unfolded and was present in the Constitution has been changed, and changed completely. So there are domestic ramifications to this issue. As a former diplomat, what interests me also is how the international community will look at this. Because there is no doubt that the international community will take note of these changes that we have made. There is also no doubt in my mind that Pakistan will try to agitate the international community. I'm not certain, but it is quite likely that they may approach the UN Secretary General and the UN Security Council, drawing their attention to these changes that have been made. I, for one, don't believe that as of now, that the international community will seek to intervene in our processes. President Trump only recently, even while offering to intervene, had agreed that J&K is a bilateral India-Pakistan matter. But all this needs to be carefully monitored, and that is what I'm sure that people in the External Affairs Ministry and other concerned parts of the government, as well as our diplomatic and security community, will be doing so today.
Ambassador Kaju, taking off from where you left, given the challenges ahead, what do you expect New Delhi to do to preempt international opinion for or against, whichever way they fall going forward? But what do you expect New Delhi to do in the days ahead?
Well, I think these are matters with what we will assert and correctly assert is that these are matters within the domestic sphere of India, that the steps that we have been taken within the domestic sphere of India regarding arrangements which are available under our Constitution, and therefore the international community and the UN has no role in this aspect. And that would be the correct attitude to take and stick to it. There are certain technicalities which may arise, but those technicalities will have to be thought through. And as of now, I must confess that I am clear about one or two technicalities, but I am not clear of the answers, and on that I need to do some more thinking. So this has come up very suddenly. People were speculating about 35A. This morning itself, if I may share with you, I had in conversations with friends that said, will they change everything? But I too had not anticipated that now we'll have no state of Jammu and Kashmir, that we will have a union territory of Ladakh and union territories of J&K. So I think all of us who follow these matters need to absorb them and then, come up with thoughts which have been carefully considered thoughts, not, speaking off the cuff. because these are very serious matters. And one can't speak off the cuff, you will agree with that.
Indeed, your point is well taken, Ambassador Kaju, but as a diplomat, you think a historical wrong has been corrected this morning, and it has sort of demolished the myths that has been propagated by many countries in the region and beyond on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir in particular?
Well, when you use the term historical wrong, it obviously connotes perspectives, and perspectives differ. And I think we are now at the threshold of a new beginning, and for the national good, we can only hope and pray that the new beginning will fructify into something which will be positive, constructive for the nation, for Jammu and Kashmir, for the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and of course Ladakh, and all this will support the integrative forces between the Union and what will now be the Union territories of J&K and of Ladakh. So we'll really have to wait and watch.
Ambassador Kaju, you've served in the Indian Foreign Ministry for many, many years now. Give a sense of what might be the thinking in South Block this morning as we speak to sell this idea to the world at large. What might be people such as the Foreign Minister Jaishankar or Foreign Secretary be thinking at this moment to sell this idea and to preempt any adverse reaction going forward?
Well, I think the statement that we've issued indicates that this is as a consequence of terrorism and among other things, and that is it's a valid comment and a valid consideration. Besides, constitutional arrangements are within our sphere. We'll have to assert that. But as I said, there are a couple of technicalities which I'll have to think through and come in. And maybe we can have a subsequent...
All right. I'm afraid we've lost that link with Ambassador Kaju. There was Ambassador Vivek Kaju talking to us about his initial reaction to the developments this morning on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. Ambassador Kaju, thank you for joining us on Beyond World is One. All right, it is getting to 33 minutes past noon India time. Just to bring our viewers up to speed with the latest news this very moment. 5 key decisions have been taken by the Indian government this morning. First, Article 370 is to be abrogated. Second, Article 35A, which flows from 370, is also to be abrogated. The state of Jammu and Kashmir will no longer remain as it is. Instead, 2 union territories will be created, one for Jammu and Kashmir with a legislature and another separately for Ladakh without a legislature. So that's decision number 1 on your screens. Article 335A to be repealed. Article 370 also to go, and Jammu and Kashmir to be bifurcated into Ladakh and J&K to be a union territory with a legislature and no special status, J&K at par with all other Indian states. So those are the 5 key decisions taken by the Indian government this morning, and I have with me my colleague Karthikeya Sharma. Karthikeya, we heard in the last few moments from Ambassador Vivek Kaju talking about the external dimension of Jammu and Kashmir issue, and he seemed to indicate that this falls firmly in the realm of domestic politics, and he seems to indicate that this is a new India or a Naya Bharat, as Prime Minister Modi talks about.
Absolutely. You see, the only bilateral issue between India and Pakistan is Pak-sponsored terrorism. Kashmir is a domestic issue of India. I think, politicians, when they use, especially in opposition, using the word bilateral in context of India and Pakistan, are misinformed. The only thing which is bilateral between India and Pakistan is the sponsoring of the terrorism. That is bilateral. Kashmir issue is completely domestic to India. And secondly, the government has changed certain status quos. It's like a birth pang. You change the status quo, you will have a position. When India detonated nuclear bombs, what did the United States of America did? Despite being calling a big friend of India today, there was a technology denial which happened. India was put under sanctions. There were threats. But then things changed for India. India has changed the status quo once again. What happened after Balakot strike? Pakistan said, there cannot be another Bala stroke. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi utilized the Indian Air Force and changed the status quo. Prime Minister Modi called Pakistan's nuclear bluff, that you cannot use Air Force against a nuclear armed adversary. So again, a status quo has been changed. And I think the point of the story here is, Ramesh, that Narendra Modi has been successively, whether you like it or not, whether you think it's good for the country or not, he has been changing status quo. From 2014 onwards, he has changed a lot of status quo. Demonetization is one. He changed the status quo on triple talaq. He has changed status quo in terms of NRC. A lot of people objected to it. He stayed firm. He changed the status quo on Rohingyas. A lot of people said they are refugees, immigrants. Amit Shah took a different position. And the most important of all, a status quo on 370 has been changed. So a new language of politics is in play in India. And that new language of politics is authored by Amit Shah and Prime Minister Modi, that there will be no status quo. As a citizen of India, I think the messaging is very clear from the two most important people right now. There is no politics of status quo. A lot of people are protesting today. I have not seen one tweet from any of the opposition members saying what could have been done in absence of this. All of them have said, well, it shouldn't have been done, or why it shouldn't have been done. But who has given the suggestion? What was the way out? And I think by changing this status quo, they have given this message that 370 and Ram Temple, they are not agendas on BJP's manifesto. They are doable things. So we have to see in context of the political imagination of the people. And that political imagination is, well, things can happen, things can change. And Ramesh, this is really one decision which should worry the Indian opposition, because this is not about an electoral defeat or victory. This changes the status quo of Indian politics after 70 years. And this will have a deep ramification. And the ramification will not be only in context of elections. There will be political and there will be social. So other political parties will need to reinvent themselves, that the politics in India has changed. It is about changing status quo in society.
All right, on that note, Karthik, do stay on. Let's listen in one more time to what Home Minister Amit Shah said in Parliament this morning.
जम्मू और कश्मीर राज्य की विधायी शक्तियां इस सदन में निहित होने एवं राष्ट्रपति द्वारा भारत के संविधान अनुच्छेद 3 के प्रावधान के अंतर्गत जम्मू और कश्मीर पुनर्गठन विधेयक 2019 को सदन के सम्मुख विचार के लिए संदर्भित करने पर जम्मू कश्मीर करने का विचार व्यक्त करता है। सभापति महोदय, जम्मू कश्मीर पुनर्गठन विधेयक 2019 पर विचार किया जाए, ऐसा अनुरोध करता हूं।
All right, you were listening to India's Home Minister Amit Shah speaking in the Rajya Sabha this morning. And in the last few minutes, we have got more news updates for you, the Beyond World is One viewer. First, close to 8,000 paramilitary troops airlifted and moved in from Uttar Pradesh, Odisha, Assam and other parts of the country to Jammu and Kashmir, in particular the Kashmir Valley. And that troops induction is still going on as we speak. That's the latest update coming in on the Jammu and Kashmir issue. And also that the Central Reserve Police Force Chief Rajiv Bhatnagar is leaving for Jammu and Kashmir to review the law and order situation in the Kashmir Valley. All right, if I can go back to my colleague Karthikeya Sharma one more time. Karthikeya, let's look at the road ahead for politics per se in terms of how this might play out domestically in New Delhi and in Srinagar.
A couple of things, this is about management of certain issues. For example, the political parties have been managed. Now, right now, since the cameras are focused on Amit Shah, only three parties are protesting. DMK is protesting, Trinamool Congress is protesting, and the Congress is on the floor. Which means, apart from that, the regional parties have gone neutral. The only party which may take a different position is JDU, which is an alliance partner of Bharatiya Janata Party. And like RTI and other bills, they might choose not to support BJP, but they will not oppose Bharatiya Janata Party. They can walk out of the house. So in the way of the management of the house, they have already done that. It entirely depends on what Congress intends to do. Will it be seen stopping the bill, preventing the bill from passage, or will they be walking out of the house? Congress itself actually evicted members when the Women Reservation Bill was passed. They evicted members of RJD and many other regional parties who were opposed to the Women Reservation Bill. So, Congress also understands that the Rajya Sabha chairman, Lok Sabha, they have ample powers in their hand to manage the house. Members can be evicted. 2 members of PDP were evicted because they threw papers and they tore, the copies which are there for the members of the parliament. So they were evicted out. The marshal had to take them out. So similar provisions are there in place, Ramesh, as to what a ruling party through the office of the chairman can do in order to control the house. Another important thing is house is in session. So the opposition right now cannot blame that the House has not been taken into confidence. So by extending the session, House has been taken into confidence. Issue is what they need to do in Kashmir. So I would say that, when we use the word Jammu and Kashmir, there are multiple parts in J&K. You have North Kashmir, South Kashmir, you have Jammu, you have Ladakh, Kargil sector and Batalik sector. Things are normal in Ladakh. Things are very much normal in Jammu sector, barring couple of places. Things will be normal mostly in the northern part of Kashmir. The only problem area is the southern part of Kashmir. That's the hotbed of the terrorism, militancy, whatever the word you may choose. So that is where the problem is. So I think that will be dealt with. As I said earlier, after we detonated the nuclear device, there was an issue. Didn't India take the call, stuck to its position when Americans were threatening us in 1971, when Nixon was talking about the 7th Fleet, but then Bangladesh did emerge. A nation was born. So there are times, when certain positions have to be taken, or when certain, I would say, ramification will have to be absorbed after a strong decision has been taken. And I think a strong decision has been taken, and government will be able to absorb political ramifications of it, because Kashmir in itself has become a part of larger culture debate in this country. I don't think that the BJP is going to suffer both politically and electorally. I think it's going to benefit. Right now, you see world over, there's a bit of a populism, there's a rush of popular nationalism, and I think BJP will ride that wave.
Indeed. On that note, Karthik, do stay with us. You spoke about ramifications, and who better to talk about ramifications or repercussions of this issue than Ambassador G. Parthasarathy, who joins me in the studio this moment. Ambassador Parthasarathy, thank you so much for joining us on Beyond World is One. Now, looking ahead, how do you think this issue might play itself out diplomatically? How might countries such as Pakistan respond to this development?
Firstly, I think missions abroad will explain that the provisions which have been changed were purely transitional and temporary. That was written into the Constitution with regard to Section 35. And and the amendment procedure we are following is strictly what is required for a temporary provision and a transitory provision. This is very, very clear. So there was no permanent provision in the Constitution.
Right.
That temporary transitory provisions have now been amended, taking into account the problems of governance.
Right.
Now, the fact of the matter is that people say it's not a full statehood, it is a union territory. But then people across the world should know that the capital, Delhi, is a union territory. It has its own government with its own chief minister. And that's the way it has very successfully functioned. And generally, Delhi is very generous with the financial resources it permits to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So that is the broad thing to the international community. It's within the framework of our democratic constitution. Nobody challenges. Transitory, temporary provisions changed by a parliamentary resolution, because this Article 35 was not voted by the Constituent Assembly.
That's right.
Came much later and was more or less
by
a presidential order. So here also there will be a presidential order to bring about these changes. As I said, with regard to union territory itself. Now, of course, Pakistan would raise this issue, to which the answer is very, very simple. Pakistan cannot complain about Jammu and Kashmir being divided into two parts. Pakistan-occupied Kashmir is divided into two parts. One which it calls Azad Kashmir, or so-called Free Kashmir, and the other is Gilgit-Baltistan, which is a Shia majority part of Pakistan, a rare place which is, apart from parts of Baluchistan, it is Shia majority, and therefore it has no representation. For Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, there is, at least for namesake, a so-called Prime Minister and a President, but the real executive authority lies with a council, which is headed by the Prime Minister of Pakistan. So the local authority has no powers. The Kashmir Council, headed by the Prime Minister, wields power. Here, you will have an elected Chief Minister, like in other states. He wields all executive powers as permitted under the Constitution. And he doesn't have to, for every morning, have to meet the Prime Minister to take decisions. So autonomy, which is certainly much larger than in the Pakistan Constitution, prevails. And it is within the framework of a democratic constitution. As I said, very clearly, of the two of Article 370, a portion of which, Article 35, was brought in by executive order.
Right.
And even the other provisions, the powers initially granted, now they found by experience that a large amount is better administered federally, and that's what happens.
Ambassador Parthasarathi, now you've served in the Indian Foreign Ministry, in the MEA, you also served in the Prime Minister's office. Now, given your breadth of experience in handling and dealing with such matters, as we speak, what do you expect New Delhi to be doing in the days ahead? Prime Minister Modi, we are given to understand, is going to address the UNGA in September. So between now and September, can we expect the Indian diplomats to hard sell this idea to the world at large, and to preempt any adverse reaction going forward?
Absolutely. There will be, I think, by the day that the resolution is passed by Parliament, the instructions will go to all Indian missions on many of the points that I have precisely made, because that's what you can logically, diplomatically explain it. It remains a part of India. The only thing which now they are going to benefit from, previously, for political reasons, if somebody who was not from the state found it very difficult to set up a business and so on and so forth, all that will be much more eased in a union territory. Much more investment will flow into Jammu and Kashmir. And the sort of insular-looking policies we've had because of these constitutional provisions will end. A greater role for the private sector, not only in India, but across the world, to invest in Kashmir, and it's a beautiful place to invest in.
Indeed, it's a beautiful place to invest, as Ambassador Parthasarathi says. Ambassador, you've seen this development from very close quarters. You've served in Pakistan. How will this morning's development affect or change the dynamic that exists between India and Pakistan today as we speak, given the fact that India says talks and terror cannot go hand in hand? India says no scope for third-party mediation. India says it is a bilateral dispute between India and Pakistan, and that Shimla Pact and Lahore Declaration form the basis for any talks going forward.
Well, I think you have seen President Trump, perhaps somewhat mistakenly, spoke of mediation, and even he has personally said no, it's for India to agree to that. So there will be these calls, but they are manageable. And as I said, in the case of Pakistan, I think it should now be made very simple. Hey, you guys have two parts which you are ruling. There are two parts under Indian sovereignty of Jammu and Kashmir. And let's see who gets greater autonomy. In fact, even the UN Council on the Council on Human Relations has said very clearly that the autonomy, especially to Gilgit-Baltistan, is a sham. There's no the legislature counts for nothing. And in the case of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, the chief executive boss is not the chief minister or the governor, it's the prime minister of the country.
True.
So it, in fact, remains a colony of Islamabad and Rawalpindi.
And talking about Pakistan, Ambassador Parthasarathi, it is not a monolith. There is the civilian government, and then there is the so-called the deep state, or the power behind the throne, so to speak, the army. Now, how will this play out in Rawalpindi, in the ISR headquarters, as well as the GHQ? Can we expect an uptick in violence? Is that what we are anticipating or fearing going forward?
If you notice, I think the precautions have been taken for that. And we've moved in some additional forces. I don't anticipate huge demonstrations and so on of that type in the present circumstances. Externally sponsored, yes. But externally sponsored, even Pakistani special forces of the BAT, or what they call as
border action,
border action teams. They've been shot down at the line of control, and they're not accepting their bodies. It's like in Kargil, we had to bury about 60 or 70 guys who were Pakistani soldiers killed. Unfortunately for themselves, they were Gilgit-Baltistan Shias, and they won't even accept them for burial. We gave them an Islamic burial in India.
Ambassador Parthasarathi, if I request you to take a step back and reflect over the developments. Now, it's taken us more than 7 decades to come this far. In your personal estimation, do you think this morning's decision corrects a historical wrong?
You know, history is a moving process. I think initially there was a sort of inhibition in doing this. People knew. I mean, any tourist who went to Jammu and Kashmir, and I've been there several times. I'm Chancellor of the university in Jammu, so I meet a lot of Kashmiri students, youth. Look, they're aspirational. Right now, there is no foreign investment, there is no domestic investment, there is no industry. And Kashmiris are very intellectually capable and hardworking people. So I think once the doors of the economy open, the ball game, as the Americans would call it, becomes different. And I'm quite pleased at that. Of course, now it has to be passed by Parliament. The general expectation of the learned pundits in the media is that it will pass, so I won't challenge that. The fact is, we need to take it from there. But the way the External Affairs Ministry functions is that there will be a couple of phones picked up by, perhaps even by the External Affairs Minister and the Foreign Secretary. Phone calls made, the ambassadors explain the details, and the briefs are pretty good, which we will get from the Home Ministry, and that presentation is made. But it really depends on the man on the spot, because I personally preferred on matters like this, like our nuclear test. Before I went to the Foreign Office, I went to the media. So, Foreign Office would take its time to come out with time, but the media is instantaneous.
Point well taken, Ambassador. Do stay on. I want to inform our viewers one more time. It is getting to 5 minutes before 1 p.m. India time. In the biggest decision on Jammu and Kashmir in independent India, Home Minister of India, Amit Shah, made his much anticipated announcement in Parliament this morning through a notification issued by the President of India, Article 370, which provides special status to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and Article 35A, which empowers the legislature of Jammu and Kashmir to define its permanent residence, have been revoked. The presidential order issued through the notification is called the Constitution Application to Jammu and Kashmir Order 2019 and will come into force with immediate effect. Now, with this, all provisions of the Indian Constitution as amended from time to time will apply on Jammu and Kashmir.
संविधान के अनुच्छेद 373 के अंतर्गत भारत के संविधान के अनुच्छेद 370 के खंड 1 के साथ पठित अनुच्छेद 370 के खंड 3 द्वारा प्रदत्त शक्तियों का प्रयोग करते हुए राष्ट्रपति संसद की सिफारिश पर यह घोषणा करते हैं कि यह दिनांक जिस दिन भारत के राष्ट्रपति द्वारा इस घोषणा पर हस्ताक्षर किए जाएंगे और इसे सरकारी गैजेट में प्रकाशित किया जाएगा, उस दिन से अनुच्छेद 370 के सभी खंड लागू नहीं होंगे, सिवाय खंड 1 के नामक तदनुसार पढ़ा जाएगा.
All right, on that note, viewers, time for a very short break. News and updates continue here on Beyond Bullsband. Don't go anywhere.